Iqbal's Educational Philosophy by K.G. Saiyidan. Great poet, great philosopher, great humanist. Time which kills and destroys, it also brings out the hidden possibilities of things. The possibility of change is the growth. Time is a great blessing. While it kills and destroys, it also expands and brings out the hidden possibilities of things. The possibility of change is the greatest asset of man in his present surroundings. Here are the chapters: the concept of individuality, the growth of individuality, and then a creative vision of education. Muhammad Iqbal, whom I consider to be one of the greatest poets and thinkers of the present age, his remarkable genius as a poet has received an adequate measure of recognition and has won the enthusiastic admiration of the younger generation in this country. अहले नज़र ज़ौक़े नज़र खूब है, लेकिन जो शय की हकीकत को ना देखे वो नज़र क्या. मकसूद हुनर सोज़ हयात अबदी है, ये एक नफ्स या दो नफ्स मिसले शरर क्या. जिससे दिल दरियाए मुतलातिम नहीं होता, ए कतरे नीसा वो सदफ़ क्या, वो गौहर क्या. बेमौज़ा दुनिया में उभरती नहीं कौमें, जो ज़रबे कलीमी नहीं रखता वो हुनर क्या. Education in its correct significance must be visualized as the sum total of all the cultural forces which play on the life of a person or a community. To the philosophical ideas of a thinker like Iqbal, who is preoccupied with a critical examination of this very problem of human development and its proper orientation, it is necessary his doctrine of individuality at some length, not only because of its intrinsic importance in his system of thought, but also because modern psychology, biology, and educational theory have laid special stress on it. To him, khudi, selfhood, individuality is a real and significant entity which is the center and the basis of the entire organization of life. Many other schools of thought, philosophical and religious, have denied the reality of the self. The Hindu and the Buddhist philosophy in the man regarded the ego or the self as a mere illusion of the mind, possessing no abiding reality of its own. The English disciples of Hegel, as well as those who believe in the doctrine of pantheism, were also of opinion that the highest objective and ideal of man is to lose his individual identity in the absolute, like the drop which slips into the ocean and ceases to exist as an individual entity. This view is definitely rejected by Iqbal, who affirms that the negation of the self should not be the man's moral or religious ideal. He should instead strive to retain his infinite, precious individuality and to strengthen it by developing greater originality and uniqueness. Like Bergson, Newton, and some of the leading biologists of the day, Iqbal believes that all living organisms are struggling to achieve a more or less complex individuality in man. The creative impulse has triumphed and he has developed powers which have opened up before him possibilities of unlimited growth and freedom. हर चीज़ है महव खुद नुमाई, हर ज़र्रा शहीद किब्रियाई, बेज़ौक़ नमूद ज़िंदगी मौत, तामीर खुदी में है खुदाई. राई ज़ोरे खुदी से परबत ज़ईफ़े खुदी से राई. एक तू है कि हक़ है इस जहाँ में, बाकी है नमूद सीमाई. Everything is preoccupied with self-expression. every atom a candidate for greatness. Life without this impulse spells death. By the perfection of his individuality, man becomes like God. Since the life of the universe comes from the strength of the cell, life is in proportion to this strength. When a drop of water gets the self lesson by heart, it makes its worthless existence a pearl. As the grass discovered the power of growth in itself, its expiration clove the breast of the garden, because the earth is firmly based on self-existence. When life gathers strength from the self, the river of life expands into an ocean. So strong and empathetic in his belief in the value and permanence of the human individuality that Iqbal rejects the view that the highest ambition and bliss for the finite individuality of man is to be lost or immersed in the infinite or the absolute, the doctor of nirvana. Thus, according to Iqbal, neither education nor other social and cultural institutions can have any higher aim than that of strengthening the individuality of the educants for the realization of their limitless possibilities. Socrates and Plato despised sense perception, which according to them yielded more opinion and no real knowledge. But Iqbal holds that the development of an active individuality is impossible except in contact with a dynamic and creative environment. He impeaches Plato as that old philosopher of the sheep because he deprecated a life of active striving in this world of varied forces and phenomena, which he refused to accept as a challenging and stimulating scene for human activity, and advocated instead a life of contemplation and pure thought, which was to be confined only to the free citizens who could afford it. The thought of Plato regarded loss as a profit. His philosophy declared that being is non-being, since he was without any taste for action. Iqbal was driven to the conclusion that this feeling of defeat and despair, this loosening of the fibers of national life, was due to the consciousness or unconsciousness adoption of the paralyzing doctrine of self-negation. Iqbal's object is to give a new orientation and a dynamic quality to their thought and conduct by preaching the fullest and freest affirmation of the self in this real world of material forces and phenomena, which can and should be utilized to serve the increasing purposes of the human spirit. Man, in the words of the Quran, is the trustee of a free personality which he accepted at his peril, which can be fully realized only if he throws himself wholeheartedly into the troubles and turmoils, the joys and sorrows of the world which surrounds him. Iqbal therefore preaches the doctrine of the fullest development and affirmation of the self in this world, with all its material forces and phenomena and all its cultural and spiritual riches. This self, which is always in the making, is a reservoir of yet untapped powers and unsuspected possibilities. Its development requires that the individual should throw himself open to all kind of formative and challenging experiences. If he withdraws from the world of strife, his individuality will shrink and wither, and his power will remain unrealized. A life of solitary, self-sufficient contemplation, which cuts him off from the stimulus and energizing currents of social life, is apt to make him egocentric and limited in his interests and sympathies. Iqbal takes a dynamic view of this process of adjustment that is constantly going on between the individual and the environment, and points out that it is the lot of man to share in the deeper aspirations of the universe around him and to shape his own destiny as well as that of the universe. Now by adjusting himself to its forces, now by putting the whole of his energy to mold its forces to his own end and purpose. And in this process of progressive change, God becomes a co-worker with him, provided man takes the initiative. God will not change the conditions of man till they change what is in themselves. If he does not take the initiative, if he does not evolve the inner richness of his being, if he ceases to feel the inward push of advancing life, then the spirit within him turns into stone and he is reduced to the level of dead matter. For Iqbal, the development of individuality is a creative process in which man must play an active role, ever acting and reaching purposefully on his environment. True self-expression, whether of the individual or the community, can be secured only when the self feeds on and draws inspiration from one's own cultural heritage and achievement. How long, O heart, this burning like the moth? How long this aversion to the ways of true manhood? Burn thyself once for all in thy own flame. How long this fluttering around the stranger's fire? Asking disintegrates the self. By begging, the beggar is made poorer. Look into thy own clay for the fire that is lacking. The light of another is not worth striving for. Iqbal said, the power of the West springs not from her music, nor from the dance of her unveiled daughters. Her strength comes not from irreligion, nor her progress from the adoption of the Latin script. The power of the West lies in her arts and sciences. It has kindled its lamp at their fire. You have learned and stored up the knowledge of the strangers, and polish your face with their robe. You borrow luck from their ways, till I know not whether you are yourself or some else. Your mind is changed to their ideas. The very breath in your throat plays on the strings of other. How long this circling around the assembly's fire? Have you a heart? Then burn yourself in your own fire. An individual becomes unique through self-realization. A nation becomes truly itself when it does not compromise. Iqbal said, arts and sciences, O lovely and eager youth, require a keen intellect, not Western clothes. What is needed in this quest is vision, nor this or not that particular headdress. If you have a subtle intellect and a discriminating mind, they would suffice to guarantee success. Iqbal said in Javednama, when one steadily burns the midnight oil, one gains access to the domain of knowledge and wisdom. This is the most important verse I read. Allama Iqbal readily welcomes their spirit of research, their sciences, their strenuous striving to gain control of their environment. But Iqbal would certainly repudiate the merely superficial and sensational side of their leisure activities because they weaken our self-respect and give us a false sense of being modern and progressive. Our educational system, with but few exceptions, is mainly based on borrowing ideas on the intellectual resources of a foreign culture. When education is organized under the inspiration of a new and healthy ideology, it will aim at the strengthening of the people's individuality. The third condition which Iqbal regards as essential for the education of true individuality is freedom. बंदगी में घट के रह जाती है एक जुए का माप और आज़ादी में बहरे बेकरार है ज़िंदगी. Enslaved, life is reduced to a small rivulet. Free, it is like the boundless ocean. How long wilt thou abide under the wings of others? In fact, like Bergson, he sees in the tremendous drama of human evolution a clear trend toward the securing of an ever-increasing freedom for man. Iqbal views is that the earth is a stage where man, equipped with the power of intelligent thought and choice, carries on a continuous experiment in living. The slave is by nature repetitive. The free man is always busily creative. His nature abhors repetition. To the slave, his lips speak only of fate. Iqbal is keen to the role of experimental, acquired knowledge for modern life, as seen in his poetry as well as in his lectures. Iqbal is constantly exhorting his readers not to be intellectually timid, but to go out boldly to conquer new domains of knowledge, unafraid of the pitfalls and dangers. Cut your path with an axe of your own. It is a sin to tread and beaten paths of others. If you achieve something unique and original, even a sin becomes a virtue. नुदरत फ़िक्र अमल क्या शय है ज़ौक़ इनक़िलाब, नुदरत फ़िक्र अमल क्या शय है मिल्लत का शबाब, नुदरत फ़िक्र अमल से मौज़ात ज़िंदगी, नुदरत फ़िक्र अमल से संग खारा लाल नाब. What is originality of thought and action? A call to revolution. What is originality of thought and action? A renaissance of national life. It is the source of life's miracles. Rely less on belief and learn to doubt, and give away knowledge and purchase wonder. We do not live in order to think. We think in order to live. Science is an instrument for the preservation of life. Science is a means of establishing the self. Science and arts are servants of life. If knowledge is not allied to and acquired through action, it cannot be transformed into power, and man cannot use it for the reconstruction of his environment. May God fire you with the ferment of an ideal, for the waters of your sea are calm and still. The book cannot be your solution, for you are only a reader. It has not been revealed to you. Another factor which Iqbal considers important in the development of individuality is the formation of new purposes and objectives to determine the direction of our activity and color the evolution of the self. It is the ceaseless quest for newer and greater creative purposes which adds zest and meaning to life and disciplines the growing powers and activities of the individuals. Life is preserved by purpose because of the goal it caravans tinkles. Life is latent in seeking. Its origin is hidden in desire. Keep desire alive in thy heart. Life is occupied with conquest alone, and the one charm for conquest is desire. From the spark to the star, from the star to the sun is my quest. I have no desire for a goal. For me, rest spells death. With an impatient eye and a hopeful heart, I seek for the end of that which is endless. It is therefore essential in the interest of a right and effective education that the teacher should awaken in his student a keen consciousness of their manifold relations with the environment, and this should lead to the formation of new and creative purposes. Purposes, however, are not formed in vacuum. They grow out of dynamic, forward-moving activity, which brings the individual into fruitful, manipulative relations with the environment. It is a process of undergoing, a process of standing something, of suffering and passion, of affection. in the literal sense of these words. Iqbal's entire philosophical thought is an eloquent plea for a life of strenuous activity. Iqbal condemns, as we have already seen, a life of seclusion, withdrawal, and passivity. Action is indeed, in Iqbal philosophy, the pivot of life. Man grows to his full stature and realizes his great destiny through a life of strenuous activity. Feast not on the shore, for there softly breathes the tune of life. Grapple with the waves and dare. Immorality is his strife. How aptly did Sikandar remark to Khizr, participate actively in the struggle of life. You watch the battle from the edge of the battlefield, die in the thick of the fight and gain everlasting life. Leave out the story of the restless moth, whose tale of burning pains my ears. That moth alone is a true moth, who is active in striving and can swallow the flame. Iqbal asks us to welcome all experience, not to shut ourselves in isolation, and condemns the schoolmaster who wants to bring up children like hothouses plants, deprived of an educative and stimulus contact with nature. शेख मकतब है एक इमारत घर, जिसकी सनत है रूह इंसानी, नुक्ता दिल पजीर तेरे लिए कह गया है हकीम क़ाआनी. What is the schoolmaster? An architect of the souls of men. How attractively has the philosopher Qaani remarked for his guidance. If you will have your courtyard flooded with light, do not interpose a wall in the path of the sun. The true joy of life is to be found not in watching the performance from the spectator's gallery, but in throwing oneself wholeheartedly, painful or pleasant, contribute to the strength and enrichment of the self. Accustom thyself to thorns. Life demands sternness and constant effort on everyone's part. Iqbal's emphasis on action has something led him to express his strong admiration for certain men of action, including great conquerors and rulers, with the results that his attitude toward them has been misunderstood. But only that dynamic quality in them which enabled them to overcome great obstacles by their power of will and strength of action. This is also the reason why his favorite birds, employed as poetic symbols, are the eagle and the hawks, which represents a life of ambition, of high endeavor, and of perpetual struggle, leading to the development of a strong individuality. Thus the eagle advises the eagle to lead a courageous and self-assertive life. "'Tis a sin to pick our food from the ground. The secret of a joyous life is to live dangerously. Danger alone tests strength and capacity. It is the touchstone of the powers of mind and the body. Similarly, the diamond, which is a self-contained and concentrated entity with a fully developed and perfected individuality, looks down upon the piece of charcoal, which is still raw and soft and hence of little value. Because thy being is immature, thou hast become abased. Because thy body is soft, thou art burnt. Be void of fear, grief, and anxiety. Be hard as a stone, be a diamond. Whoever strives hard and holds tight, the two worlds are illumined by him. In solidarity consists the glory of life. Weakness is worthless and immaturity. Follow not the peer who is afraid of turmoil. If education is to be a preparation for life, it must be achieved through active participation in life